All right, it is August 3rd. It is hot as hell, but it is summertime here in the nation's capital. The Cabo kid is back. Maybe it was hotter there, maybe it was cooler there. It's his birthday eve. Here's Riggo.
Yes, you're right, Todd. Actually, I didn't think it was that hot. My air conditioner's out on the car. It's been that way for about, I don't know, since summer began. I haven't got it fixed yet. But I don't drive it hardly very often. I drive it when I come over here. You know what? There's something, I don't know what to say. Maybe it's when you get older that you start thinking about yesteryear. And there's something about driving around in the summertime with your windows down like it used to be.
Right.
There was no air conditioning when I was a kid. It's kind of, the only thing missing would be the cornfields and the alfalfa fields and all that when we used to drive from Centralia to Pine City, Minnesota for our summer vacation, which would be going on right now.
The big city?
Yeah, Pine City now, 60 miles north of the Twin Cities. But yeah, we'd go up, and it was always, and my dad have his arm resting on the car. And back in those days, early on, my dad smoked, so you had to have the windows down.
And you definitely only an AM radio. There's no FM.
Yeah, absolutely.
No FM.
Straight. And we did leave the radio on a little bit. I do remember, where were we? I remember the song Flying Purple People Eaters. I mean, stuff that you pull out of your mind. Summertime. No, that wasn't out yet.
How about Itsy Bitsy Teeny Weeny Yellow Polka Dot Bikini, what she wore.
That's it. You got all that going on. Anyway, I've got a lot. Tomorrow is my birthday, so we're going to, so I'm thinking about this. I got so much stuff. I did get back from Cabo. I'm going to talk about that in just a second. But I've got so much, when you take off a week in the summertime, I don't know if you're like this, but every time you come back from, even if it's a weekend, a long weekend, you're lost when you get back because you don't know what, there's all kinds of bullshit you got to do, but you can't figure out, where do I start? Which is my list of priorities, what are they? Fortunately, I've got them spelled out because my lovely wife, Lisa Marie, bought some outdoor furniture and I got to stain the deck. So I got everything cleared off of it yesterday. Today, when I get back, I'll power wash it. I'll blow it off first because I got a backpack blower. I'll blow that stuff off. Then I'll power wash it. And I'm thinking, Todd, really, seriously, should I stain the deck on my birthday? That doesn't seem right to me. But I can't really put it off. I'm already behind it. It's like I got a lot of shit to think about here.
You told me about it. I asked you yesterday. And I was half kidding. I said, so you got your next project lined up? And it wasn't staining the deck. It was a lot worse. Where you were going to pick up a piece of equipment.
Oh. Well, it's funny you bring that up because I'll start. I got a little list here. I got to do the deck, right? That's one thing. I've got about 70 bags of mulch that's on the pallet right now that needs to be put down. I got to go in the backyard. You're talking about the machine and get a rototiller and till up the backyard so I can reseed grass in about another 2 to 3 weeks. And then I've got I got to power rake the front yard and get up all the dead crap. And by that time, though, I don't think there's, and I usually do this every fall, I usually aerate the soil. I don't know, by the time I get to that, I mean, I'm gonna be at what do you call it, a grease spot someplace. It just didn't, so yeah, I got all this stuff to look forward to. I got another thing I got to talk about, which is just weird and uncanny. And there's something, I'm not much of a superstitious guy, really. I mean, I can be at times just for the hell of it. You got to go, well, if I do this, you never know. But last night, I'm in the kitchen, and I noticed that there was a fly buzzing around, and, we got all glass on that backside. And, of course, this fly was bumping into glass, trying to get out. No, I didn't think nothing about it. And all of a sudden, I noticed there was another fly. Now, these aren't the kind of flies, well, when we were kids, we used to go down the creek and fish. Occasionally you'd be down there and, you'd have to relieve yourself. This is a scatological conversation, so you can stop the podcast if you're watching it right now, because I talk about all kinds of stuff, and, this is one of those things. And so you'd come back where you'd come back, you'd look, and within 30 seconds, that whole little pile of doo-doo was covered and these green flies that look like those sunglasses people wear now that are blue and green, and reflect. Oh, they're beautiful flies, but they're just, I mean, you couldn't take a grain of salt and toss on the poop and hit the poop. It would hit a fly in the back. That's how covered it was. Just to set this up. So I see the one fly buzzing around. And then all of a sudden I see a second fly, and so I'm going, oh, what the hell is this? Oh, who left the door open? Somebody got a fly in. So I went upstairs because I'm thinking, well, I ain't a guy that's into flies. I don't know about you.
Ooh, I hate them.
Yeah, exactly. Not good.
If you see multiple ones, you got a problem.
Well, now it gets better, Todd. So I found this little deal I bought years ago, and it looks like a whisk broom in a way. But it's cylindrical, and it's about this long, and it's basically corn straw. I think or corn. It's what you make brooms out of.
Right.
Broom corn or something, I think it's called. And so it's really handy because you don't. They put it into glass. How many times you taken the old plastic or wire fly swatter and you smack something and it is just like splats, and now you got to go clean that up. This thing is a little bit more feathery, which immobilizes the fly and doesn't splatter it. And a lot of times it kills it, but sometimes it falls to the floor and starts walking around. Then you just crush it out with your foot. So
you don't rehabilitate. You don't let it go outside.
Well, I feel badly. I'm not. No, Well, what the hell is? I think his wings are broken. I mean, he wouldn't be walking if he could fly. Todd, come on. I mean, I'm thinking that's what the fly's thinking. Oh, my wing. It's like, what's his name? Caddyshack. Oh, my arm.
It's my arm, Rodney. Oh.
So I get the fly, and I bang, and I get these. Next thing I know, there's another fly. Bang, another fly. Bang, another fly. I killed a dozen flies, and they weren't like swarming all together, but they was all on this window. And then all of a sudden, later on, and I thought, okay, fine. And then, there's another one. This is about 10 minutes later. Todd, I don't know how many flies we had in the kitchen. I got to say at least 20 over this, an hour or two period. So I'm going, something ain't right here. I don't know if why would flies? I've had yellow jackets get in the house, but it's obviously there's some opening that's able to, but why flies? I mean, why would they, either that or there's a nest. I mean, is this an infestation or something? There was none this morning though, thank God. But I got to say this, and like I said, I'm not really superstitious, but in the back of your mind, you go, and then all of a sudden he goes, oh yeah, didn't I see this in some movie where there was and it's like, it portends the devil is, I mean, it was
okay, so it wasn't Jeff Goldblum. It wasn't Jeff Goldblum.
No, it wasn't Jeff Goldblum. or Vincent Price.
Right.
The original,
yes.
The original. But seriously, you go, I've never seen this before. I've never had it. I mean, my mom grew up on a farm, dairy farm. Now, if there's any place that has flies, it's a dairy farm. You go in the. Now this is 60.
Shoe fly don't bother me.
This is 60. Yeah, this is 60 years ago. And I remember my grandfather. That was back when DDT and all. I mean, my God, it's like I'm thinking to myself, the little can with the whoosh, whoosh, and I remember him spraying the barn
back
in
when
there.
Chemicals were chemicals.
And they're milking cattle. And
Agent Orange.
You can only imagine. I guess that wouldn't have been grade A milk. It would have been cut below. But yeah, I mean, it's like. I remember in the house there, and they had that old, the old screen door where you opened it up and had the spring on it, pulled itself and slammed itself.
And would bounce.
Exactly. I mean, you couldn't lock it. It was just an open, closed door. But my God, with all the flies they had out there, I don't ever remember an instance like what happened to me last night in my big fancy schmancy house over there in Cabin John.
I have to do a little recon when I come over tomorrow.
Yeah, I gotta monitor this and just see how it goes. Because I told Lisa, I said, you better call that exterminator that we use every so often. Because, and she said, well, should I call him this morning? I said, well, I came down this morning because I was kind of actually half-assed scared to go downstairs. I mean, I was thinking, what if I went down there and there was a cloud of flies? Let me tell you something. That's not a laughing matter. I mean, it is and it isn't. If it would have come to fruition, I go downstairs and I got 150, 200 flies. And it looked like a flock of geese
been looking
down there.
For you.
Oh man, that's when I get out the vacuum cleaner because that's a very effective way to get rid of mosquitoes. You just start sucking them out of the air.
Oh yeah, that is.
Well,
in flies.
And once you get them over on the window, that's another story I can tell. There was a guy that went to a hotel, and he stayed in the hotel, and the guy told him, he said, well, listen, I got one room left. He said, but it's loaded with flies. I got to tell you that up front. He said, well, that's all right. I'll take the room. And so he takes the room. The guy gets up, and he gets up in the morning, comes in to check out, pay his bill. And the guy goes, so, well, because the guy that owns the hotel, he's like really curious. What this guy takes a room with flies? So the guy comes out and he's paying his bill and he says, well, how'd you sleep last night? Oh, I slept great. And he said, really? He says, well, what about all that flies? Oh, hell, they didn't bother me. Well, he said, how's that? He says, well, all you got to do is just take a poop in the corner and bunch them. Which goes along with what I told earlier, and you can cut that if you want to. But anyway, Cabo. Well, Cabo was an interesting trip. I met my cousin down there. He and I meet down there. He lives in L.A., and we go down. Lisa Marie and I went down for a week, and we went out fishing for a day for bluefin. Now, or yellowfin, I'm sorry. Bluefin's East Coast, yellowfin. They may have bluefin in the Pacific someplace else, but this is mostly yellowfin tuna down there as far as I know. And we went out for the day, and the situation, I mean, the conditions were pretty good, but you realize, we was in a single engine diesel powered boat. I have no idea who the maker was. The beam on it, which is the width of a boat, it's about like a saw blade maybe. I don't know, maybe a little wider. I mean, it was like, whoa, pretty tipsy. But anyway, we get out there. We went out 28 miles to where the the yellowfin were. And we fished, and all of a sudden the guy decided he wanted to go another 12. So we ended up 40 miles. 40 miles.
How long that take you?
Huh?
How long is that?
About a 3-hour run.
Woo.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what they do out here at Ocean City.
One way?
4 hours to get to I'm talking about Ocean City, and I think it's a 4-hour run to get to what they call the Gulf Stream.
Right.
And then it's 4 hours back, 4 hours of fish. That's a 12-hour day. I mean, It ain't exactly, I mean, particularly when the ocean's bad. In fact, the week before, my cousin had went out with his son, and they got thrown around, got knocked off their feet. It was rolling so bad. But what happened was you're at 40 miles, and you start thinking about stuff like I didn't know which way land was. I mean, I had no clue. My cousin fishes down there so much, he could tell by the sun kind of what he thought where land was. But 40 miles, something happens to the boat, and a week before we got there was a boat that sank out in the same area. But nobody was lost. But still, I don't want to be treading water out there waiting for somebody to come and get me. So we start back. The guy comes down and says, we got to head back. And we went, okay. He says, but we're only going to be able to run about half speed because I got something going on with my battery. Now, I don't know what that meant. I'm thinking, the alternator isn't working, so the battery is having to supply all the electricity. I had that happen once in a car, and it doesn't turn out very well. And so we go half speed. Now we're half speed, so now you're talking about 4, 5, 6 hours maybe to get back. So we get I would say after about 2 hours, all of a sudden, we get up on step, and he's got the throttle wide open, I guess, or close to it, so we're going the way we were when we were coming out. And don't you know, Land's End, that's where the what do you call it, the peninsula, I guess it would be the peninsula of the Baja sticks out in, between the Sea of Cortez and the Pacific Ocean.
Right.
Land's End, it's a rock. You've seen thousands of pictures of it. And it's got there's one of those things where you can drive a boat through. It's a piece of rock that's carved, hollowed out in the middle. We can see that about 3 miles, and that motor just dead. So there we are. We're so close.
It lands
as the old saying goes, and yet so far.
That's not an omen.
Yeah, so anyway, the boat captain, he called. We did catch tuna, though. We caught about 9 tuna. It wasn't anything big, though. They're like footballs. They weren't too big. But Anyway, it was an interesting trip. Cabo was nice. Ate some good Mexican food here and there. But Lisa Marie loves Cabo, and she's been going down there for 40 years. Her dad bought a place down there in the early 80s, and so it stayed in the family. He's deceased now, but it stayed in the family, so that's why she goes down so much. But she loves to go down and get a book and go out to the pool and read. Right? What do you think? It's like, I can't
do that either.
This isn't me. And I went for a couple long walks with her. And then, but other than that, I just sat in the apartment. And stayed out of the sun. And she during the trip, on the way home, says, well, you didn't really have much that you could do down there. I said, well, I did go fishing for a day. I said, but I didn't have to cook. I didn't have to mow grass. I didn't have to, dump mulch anywhere. I didn't have to, stain the deck. So in a way, it was kind of good for me too. So even though I'm sitting in, I'm like the poor soul sitting in the apartment. Like, what do I do now?
How much more time do we have?
Yeah, exactly. Well, now you got 3 days
I can't do
left.
the laying out thing in the sun. I just can't do it.
Well, listen, if you've ever been to Carlisle for 2 days, you understand how, this is okay. You can live with this. I mean, in other words, you've been in the county slammer for 30 days at a shot. That's the way I see 2 days, which I guess started since I've been gone. I don't know. 2 days are probably a thing of the past, right?
Pretty much. All these practices today they're glorified. They didn't. So basically, it was a week ago, John, when camp opened up here in Washington, and I think it was yesterday was their first full day of pads and any contact. It is so regimented as part of the collective bargaining agreement of what they can and cannot do. I mean, it's nothing.
And it makes you wonder. I don't know. I mean, I talked to Dan Riley, the old strength coach.
Who was the man?
Dan's my age, so I guess I can call him the old strength coach.
And a revered strength and conditioning coach, way ahead of the curve, right? By NFL standards back in the day.
Oh, yeah. He was out in the Arthur Jones, the guy that invented Nautilus equipment.
Yes.
Dan was a what do you call it?
Consultant?
Well, yes, but I mean, he was a
contributor?
Disciple
Right, okay.
of Arthur Jones. He says he's the most brilliant man he ever been around.
Wow.
When you think about, I never understood it, but that whole cam system on a...
Isolation.
Well, it's that, but that cam on a Nautilus machine, and I don't know if they even make them now because I'm sure they must, but I don't know if it...
Everything's a variation.
We're talking about 40 years ago.
Yeah. Right.
They may have went out of business. But it's basically what I think the way Dan explained to me, but it's been so many years, I may have gotten it wrong, that as the exercise goes out, the muscles experience different amount of stress on them. That cam is to equalize that stress and keep the actual strain or the actual work on the muscle constant throughout the entire exercise. Because take weights. If you're just a dead weight and you're doing a bench press, it takes so much energy to get that weight off. But once you get going up, particularly if you start getting momentum, your muscles are no longer in that area or getting worked as hard as they were down here. I think it's something like that.
Yeah.
The whole deal with the two-a-days was, and this is what I talked to Dan about, is back then, guys got injured, don't get me wrong. But we're talking 40 years ago. This is back when one of the coaches wouldn't allow water on the field. In other words, that predates, and that would have been in the mid 70s or whatever. So if you go back before that, that was pretty much a common practice. No water. Hello. I mean, they were killing people in a way. But at the same time, I don't ever remember anybody falling out, and I never ever remember during a game anybody ever getting an IV at halftime.
Cramps.
Yes.
Right.
Never. And none of these guys, well, most of them, I should say, not none of them. And we talked about this the other day, I think, when we had Mark Bryan on here about practice and getting, working out before the season starts to get ready for what you got to do. Most of these guys had off-season jobs. They weren't working out in the off-season. They'd show up in mid-July, wherever their camp opened, two-a-days. And I mean, it was dog eat dog from the go. It was two-a-days. You had contact the very first day, that afternoon. It was just like, depending on where you were, some places were different. But there was never any IVs. Like I said, you'd still get guys that would get injured. But it seems like today, these guys, they take a month off, then they start lifting the weights, right? And I don't know what all they can do in the off season. But they've got the OTAs and they got all this stuff. I mean, it almost seems like rest, believe it or not, and I'm a firm believer in rest, that it is definitely a necessary part of working out. And I'm wondering, and Dan and I have to, I haven't talked to Dan for a while, but it's like, why do the guys get all these in? They get to where they need, saline, whatever they put in your veins when you're dehydrated.
Especially we're going to see it the first 4 or 5 weeks, and you're going to see it throughout these preseason games. How the cramping is off the charts. And John,
is it because they got muscle and we didn't? I don't know what it is.
I mean, this way.
Fat doesn't cramp. I know that.
You're saying they're not marbled well like a fine steak.
Maybe that's it. We were marbled and they're not.
They're chiseled. You guys were marbled.
Exactly. They're like a skinny steer you find in the
We've
desert.
talked about because there virtually is no off season as a professional athlete for these guys, and it is minimal downtime. So you guys used to go into camp to get in shape for the most part.
That's where I was going with it originally. That's what we do. You go back.
And now they're going in, they're already in shape. Or they better be, or they won't be around long because everybody else is. And the other thing we talked about is these oddball injuries of more torn pecs, torn biceps.
Exactly.
That you rare if you ever heard
Labrums,
somebody.
right? Labrums.
Yeah.
I didn't know what a labrum was until about 10 years ago, and everybody's tearing a labrum and all that. Well, I don't know what that is.
So it's weird, the dynamic that these guys are supposed to be in the best shape, but like you say, is it too much? We got to get Riley on some point and get his perspective.
Yeah, it's almost to me like they have, it's a kind of an Olympics in a weird sort of way to see how much you can bench press. I don't know if they even, because
Well, it's the underwear Olympics. They do at the combine.
That's what I was talking about. That's exactly. That kind of is the mindset of coaches. And this goes, in fact, I think you were there when we were out at the park a couple of years ago and I was doing a podcast out there, and one of the employees asked me if I thought I could play today.
He shall remain nameless.
Yeah. Well, I can't remember.
He was a young fellow trying to find his way, but
yeah,
he played college football. And I did a little research, and you saw the look on my face when he asked me. He goes, in all seriousness, John, do you think you could play in today's NFL?
Right.
I was like, oh, exactly. Shit. Did he really just ask that question?
Bob Hayes will be able to play into the future. I mean, who he was, the talent level that guy possessed. It's just like, it's kind of absurd. And that's what I'm saying. It's almost like marketing now. In other words, what the NFL has become.
It's not like it is.
Yeah, there used to be slobs that played back when I played.
But they're football players versus just athletes. And what's your other famous saying? Built like Tarzan, play like Jane.
Yeah.
There's a zillion big guys out there. But who can play the game?
Exactly. And that, to me, is kind of what this gets down to. Because, I have every confidence. Now, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm not, because DNA is DNA, and you know me, Todd, I'm a big firm believer in horsepower. As a rule, a tractor with more horsepower is going to be able to pull more bottoms on the plow, just the way it works. You don't get a 30 horsepower tractor pulling six 16-inch bottom plows. That just doesn't work. Now you get a 250 horsepower tractor. Yeah, it's so. It does. To me, it's a bunch of fluff. I don't know how they'd get around it. And I don't know how I would handle it today because, A, I would not want to be lifting weights in the off season, which I didn't. Riley finally got me convinced it couldn't hurt me, and I did a little bit of it. I dabbled in it. I didn't really like lifting during the season, but he kind of had me in a mindset that, well, it's not going to hurt you. So, well, if it ain't going to hurt me, I'll go along with it. But I was never a big firm believer in that. And my point is that I think that there's too many, scientific athletes. I mean, to me, either got it or you don't got it. That's the way I look at it. But maybe we're talking about the very top echelon of players, which has pretty much stayed the same. But it's the guys that want to make the team that really hit the weight room hard. Those guys on the edge. And maybe but yet it seems to me the guys with real talent, they have to pay the price because how do you... now you're discriminating because, well, in our opinion, you're lucky to be here, pal. But meanwhile, you got, Johnny Weissmuller over here who's chiseled, runs a 9.5, and is good for it.
Coach, I just bench pressed the entire weight room.
Exactly. But I'm talking about a guy that's good for it, too. Right. It's like, you got Jack Champ, the real Jack Champ.
Let's take an Earl Campbell, a John Riggins,
there you go.
A Jim Brown.
Right.
That's
the kind of the guy I'm talking about.
Or
Joe Jacoby.
Yes.
We got to throw Joe in there just because the Hall of Fame bullshit starts this week, and that just makes me sick to my stomach.
Yeah.
And I saw there was a nice article somebody wrote, and I think it was in USA Today, wasn't it, about what a crime this was. And if you look at his accomplishments, I mean, I can't, and I don't want to take anything away from these guys, but I never watched them play. But in all honesty, Tony Baselli is probably a really good football player and perhaps really deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. But I can say this unequivocally, that he doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame ahead of Joe Jacoby. In all honesty, Big Tony couldn't carry Joe's jockstrap, as they say.
100%.
I mean, and I don't want to upset you, Tony, but that's just a fact, and you're going to have to learn to live with it.
Yeah.
And yet, here you got a guy Baselli, what did he do in the NFL? He came from SC, and I don't mean to pick on somebody, but I guess it's like you got to pick on somebody because he went in ahead of Joe Jacoby. He played, 6 years, 7 years? He was played for Jacksonville?
Right.
Jacksonville.
Good
God, they play some dirty good football in Jacksonville if you're in the NCAA. Now, when you get into the NFL, that's a different story if you play for Jacksonville.
Yeah. I mean, it's marketing. It's a joke. He's a league guy. He's always been that guy. But as time passes on, the travesty continues as it applies to Joe Jacoby for starters, and
Well,
Jake
there's
in a
plenty
big
other
way.
guys.
But the fact of the matter is, and I worked with Coach Gibbs on the campaign going back 5 years ago now, and putting together the Hall of Fame presentation. And Joe's stats, they're mind-boggling.
Yes.
What he did against the NFC East, when the NFC East was the baddest division, against Clyde Simmons, Reggie White, the Cowboys. Oh, how about the New York Giants?
Harvey Martin.
We have testimonials from LT, from you name it.
What the hell do these people listen to? I mean, this is what really galls me, is you have the guys that actually were down there on the field that looked in one another's eyes when the ball was snapped, and here we go, who's going to win this thing? You've got, like you said, the Lawrence Taylors and who's the kid that played for Minneapolis? Dolman, was he one
Chris
of them?
Dolman.
And you got him saying, listen, when it came to a tackle, this guy was as tough to get around as anybody in the league. So, yeah, but I write for, the New York Times, and I've watched football for 20 years. And you can't, that's where I don't, the Hall of Fame one is great. I'm very fortunate to be in it. I appreciate it. But at the same time, I know it's a popularity contest. I'm not going to kid myself. If the NFL and they can spread and fool everybody and promote the NFL and market their product and all that, knock yourselves out, guys. But I've had one moment, Todd, in 30 years, because this would have been the 30th year, 92 is when I went in. There was one moment, and I think I'd had a few shooters, where it hit me like it would have been had I been a kid, and you were kind of like overwhelmed and in awe that you were in this select group. Mm-hmm. I don't understand, but my mindset then, it lasted for a while, and then it was gone, and I can't get it back based on what I know. And I've said this in the years gone by. I don't know how many of the people that vote on this, what their opinion would be if football players voted who they thought the best sports writers were for the Sports Writing Hall of Fame. They might go, oh, yeah, well, okay, yeah, they are dumb football players after all. So, so-and-so, he got shorted because he's really a great writer. But
that guy, he screwed me over and took a shot at me one time, so he's not getting in.
Yeah, there you go. So that's what I'm saying. You got to take it with a grain of salt. But it is an injustice, and I know, by now, the worst part is that, and Harry Carson went through the same thing.
Right.
For years and years and years, he was ignored. Somehow you get on. I was looking through the list because they sent me some stuff because it is this week, and I'm not going to.
There's a game tomorrow night, so the festivities start on your birthday tomorrow.
Yeah, and I went through and was looking at guys, that you go. It took him 10 years to get into the hall. So it's the way it's weird the way that works out. I don't know what to say on behalf of Joe at this point in time. It's just so wrong and so disappointing and disillusioning that you really do. You just kind of you throw the baby out with the bathwater. You go, the Hall of Fame. Who cares?
Well, Jake is such an injustice, and we've continued to battle it. We know who the voters are. We know what's going on. I won't even get into the stories of the bias and the New York media bias and the New York Giants and the Peter King, who was the beat reporter for the New
As
York.
If he knew anything.
Yeah, with
he knows
Belichick
stuff.
as the D coordinator, and I confronted him in
I think
Houston.
Belichick has it in for Washington, for those
100%.
for those teams of the 80s and 90s.
That's where I'm going with this, John. 100%.
And whatever he says, he's King
That's
Bill.
right, and he still is.
King William.
He still is, and they are besmirching. You realize the Joe Gibbs teams in that 10-year run, there are more Buffalo Bills players of the Marv Levy teams that made 4 straight Super Bowls and lost all 4. Redskins played in 4, won 3, that the Buffalo Bills have more people in the hall, and it's by like 2 or 3, versus the Joe Gibbs teams of that 10-year stretch. That's a joke.
It is.
It is an absolute joke.
But it makes you wonder. I mean, what's the solution? There isn't any.
There isn't
I can
any.
see.
They've got a new head. Dave Baker's gone. They've got a new head, and they have expanded the classes, and they expanded.
Right. There's 10. There's like 8 or 9. I think 9 inductees. There's 2. They're not seniors.
They expanded they expanded contributors, the coaches and contributors. They expanded that, and they expanded the seniors by a couple, and they're doing that for a couple of years. But the backlog of great players in that pipeline that have been, the injustices continue to escalate versus you're going to tell me that some of these guys that are coming out today, the Jason Taylors, the Brian Urlachers, are first ballot Hall of Famers? No. Are they Hall of Fame worthy? Probably. But first ballot? And this is where the entire thing is watered down because it's all marketing. They want you to go to the Johnson Controls facility, the New World Hall of Fame Village, and it's literally, it's Wally World. It's Disney World, and you can bowl there. You can buy a condo there. It's lost its way. It's all about the money. Follow the cash.
It always has been, Todd.
Yep.
That's what the Good Old Boys Club is all about. Anyway, I didn't mean to jump off on that tangent. But
I'm glad you did because I meant to tell you we gotta tackle this on for Jay because it's bullshit.
Listen, I got to tell you, I don't know how you can really. There's 4 guys that played in that offensive line. Russ Grimm is in the Hall of Fame, but there's 2 others that we haven't mentioned: Jeff Bostic and Donnie Warren.
Yeah.
And listen, I just think the world of those guys for what they accomplished. They 4 guys together for whatever it was, 12 years or whatever, played in 4 Super Bowls and won 3. Offensive linemen.
That'll never happen again.
I don't see it. No.
It'll never happen again.
So it's like there's something going on. And Joe Bugle. Do they ever put assistant coaches in? I've never heard of that.
Well, he could be a contributor. I'd have to do research to see if that exists.
I've always thought that's the same thing. You've got some guys that, like an offensive line coach, like what Joe Bugle was all those years. You'd see what his legacy is, what he produced, and But the head coach, from the standpoint of the administrative part of it or the coaching part, what do you want to call it, is always the guy that gets in, right? That's the head coach. It's kind of like, in a weird sort of way, and Brian Mitchell is another guy that is, you could make the argument that has been overlooked based on his overall contributions.
Overlooked. It's stunning what B. Mitch did as a returner and how valuable that was.
Exactly.
And you could say this thing about, right, Pettibone and his defenses.
Yes,
between
Richie.
the bone and over on the offensive side over there with knock that out right there with Bugle and what they did. And Gibbs acknowledges that to this day, that people say defense said Joe Gibbs was never in our meetings.
I was just getting ready to say, as far as I know, he never left the offensive meeting, so how could he be in the defensive
Keep an
meeting?
eye on the big guy.
Well, when I went, I'd go in eventually because I was never in a passing game, and I finally went to Joe Gibbs and said, Joe, what am I doing in here when you turn on the film? I'm wasting time, ain't I? Shouldn't I be over there with the lineman? And he kind of thought about it and went, yeah, maybe that's a good idea.
He goes, you're not going out to that shed, are you?
Ooh. No, I never did do that. Well, one time. But anyway, what do you got?
All right, John. Well, it is hard to believe, but football is here, and the
day away, right?
Yep, the Hall of Fame game. So you got your real bullshit preseason exhibition. Season starts.
Exhibition. The NFL they didn't like that term years ago. Exhibition season.
No, it's not an exhibition.
Preseason.
So the exhibition season starts tomorrow night. Jacksonville's playing somebody. I don't even know who. But I know Jacksonville already said like their top 2 players, including Trevor Lawrence, are not playing. So it's tryouts for the guys that are on the bubble and see what your draft picks can do is basically.
Are they playing? No, they did that last year, played 17 games, right?
Yes.
Is it 17 again this year?
It is. It is. So that gets started, your Hall of Fame ceremonies, but what an explosive week it has been already in the last 48 hours. I mean, I'm going to back it up for 1 second here because a week ago on Thursday, Dinky Doo out in Dinky Doink in Ashburn, the owner testified without the subpoena portion of it, testified via video conferencing while he was in Israel with his attorney. And he did not have to have his video on, and there were all these stipulations, and nobody knows what went down. Because
you can only imagine what was going on out there with the attorney going. So nobody could see what was going on. Yeah.
They were going to need a full timeout.
Exactly.
So that was last week, and everybody's waiting to see if this committee is going to release a written report on his testimony.
Oh, so this hasn't, this, I was thinking it was odd because I knew that was happening last week while I was in Cabo, but I never saw any conversation about it.
Nothing, because it was private. It was behind closed doors, behind closed video.
Can I stop you there for a second?
Please.
I'm curious, why didn't Congress go, I don't understand how you can stiff-arm Congress when it comes to something like this. Why Congress didn't, well, you know, with all due respect, we need you here. It's going to be like all the other, you're going to be treated like everybody else in this process. And so you come down here, and if you can't do that on your own volition, then I guess we're going to have to subpoena you. Why would they not subpoena?
They wrestled and wrangled till the 24th hour whether or not he was voluntary testifying versus he was issued a subpoena, and therefore it was under a different set of circumstances and what they could and could not do. So this is the amount of lawyers that are involved in this, and specifically for the commander, for Danny's side, is I can only imagine what those bills look like because they were arguing over the words like and this and that, and so they got their way this go around. So that's happened last week. We have no idea. Nothing's been released. You still have almost 40 people that are aggrieved, mainly women. I think it's 30 out of 40 that are represented by Deborah Banks and Katz, who are very prominent attorneys here. They're not going away. So you've got the ownership side of things. So yesterday, they go after the Stephen Ross situation with the Miami Dolphins. He gets busted. He gets busted on. So it wasn't the most serious charges that he got busted on, but it was the notion that. Remember, Brian Flores said that he was told to tank games and to lose intentionally and to improve their draft prospects.
That put Pete Rozelle on a spit right there. He was spinning at about 2,600 revolutions per minute.
He's like, integrity of the game,
exactly.
Integrity of the game. Him and Bowie Kuhn together side by side, integrity of the game.
Don't forget, what's his name, Landis, what was his name?
Yeah.
The guy that was
the old baseball commissioner?
Exactly.
So Ross and the Dolphins, they get slapped down. They lose first-round draft picks next year, I think a third-round pick the following year. He is suspended from all football activities through the middle of, I think, October 17th. Stephen Ross is fined $1.5 million, which I got to imagine that might be $1.50 to a guy who has as many billions as he does. I mean, literally.
Yeah, to me, that's kind of a joke.
He's taken off all the NFL committees he's currently on. So he got caught for tampering and trying to recruit Tom Brady, and so they
is that what he got busted for?
That's what he got busted for. They did not get busted for any tanking or trying to lose games. League said nope, no smoking gun there. Not going to happen.
Listen, they couldn't find him guilty of that. They could not find him. Brian Flores may have a prima facie case here. That's right.
Ooh, that's a good league. You just hit me with a Lisa Marie legal term over here. Damn.
Former prosecutor. I don't know what it means. I watched Perry Mason.
Do you need a sidebar or something over here? What are we doing?
But there's no way they could acknowledge that. Just could not acknowledge that because all of a sudden, the doubt that would put in the public's mind. But let me just say this dawned on me. And I would say this, and I say it in all sincerity. People don't care. I got news for you. People don't care. Yeah, some do, but I'm going to tell you what, they care for about 12 hours, maybe if they're really serious, 24 hours.
Is this going to help us win?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just like, I don't know why the league jumps through all these machinations and doesn't, just says, hey, we are what we are, okay? Warts and you like us, warts and all.
What do you always say, John? And what did you do on Sundays?
Yep.
Created the illusion.
Exactly, and it's the players that do that. And this is the thing.
And the league fuels and facilitates it.
Well, exactly. They're the ones that they produce it, but the actual talent that's on the field create the memories, basically is the way it goes. But when you stop and think, because people, I'm guessing, and it's against the law, by the way, to do what that would be something that and that's the other thing. Why isn't the FBI involved in this? That is a crime. If he was telling his coach, I'm thinking, isn't it? I mean, if I'm a player,
they don't have the goods on them.
Huh?
They don't have the goods, and like you say, the league's like, oh, well,
they say they don't have the
definitely
goods.
don't.
Do you think have you heard of the FBI even investigating any of this? It's all been done internally with the league, hasn't it?
Yeah, because the league's a private business, and they handle their business with their bylaws.
Not when it comes to. I wouldn't think when it comes to something where there's alleged.
Is this another prima facie thing? What are we doing?
No, I'm just saying, if you're doing something that supposedly is illegal, if you shave points, that's the illegal thing in basketball, right?
Yes.
So how could you tell your coach
it's a legal thing in the NFL?
Huh?
It'd be illegal in the NFL. Why are you sending a lot of basketball?
You turning Clarence Darrow?
Are you supporting the Shield? We would never do that.
That you would think law enforcement, when they hear, what did somebody say? They told
that's
to
a federal
tank
crime.
the games?
Right.
Well, that's a pretty goddamn big statement to make, if you ask me.
All right.
But the league is so powerful that I'm sure it's a phone call to, what's his name, Director Ray? Is that who's director?
Christopher Ray of the FBI?
And, hey, it's nothing, Chris. It's nothing. You got bigger fish to fry. Get out of here. Yeah, okay.
So the Dolphins, nobody was expecting this. This kind of came up.
It was like a bomb just dropped.
It
right?
was. And as we're painting this picture here, John, and remember, the Commanders are the biggest turd as far as ownership goes on the desk of the league and Mr. Roger.
You would think.
Mr. Roger Goodell. So this has been going on for years, and the last 2 years in particular with the Commanders and the gang that can't shoot straight out there. So now you've got the DeShaun Watson thing that everybody's been on with bated breath and what's coming down and how's this going to go down. So secondarily, off of the Dolphins, to put a bow on that, one of Ross's top guys, he gets busted for tampering, trying to recruit Sean Payton. Sean Payton to be the head coach of the Dolphins, which, remember when Sean Payton just kind of arbitrarily said, yeah, new deal, I'm out. I'm going to take some time off, maybe hit the broadcast booth or whatever else. So they get busted for that and tampering with Tom Brady, who just turned 45. His birthday's, I think, the day before yours. 45. He's going to be the oldest quarterback to ever start a game in league history.
He's going to go to the well once too often.
Yeah.
Of course, the way the rules are, I guess he can get away with it. He'll probably get away with it.
So the Dolphins get their PP smacked, and Ross says, I disagree with everything. I didn't do anything, but we want to focus on the season at hand. All right, don't forget to buy my season tickets, and we're going to love to see you down at the Hard Rock.
He went with the Alfred plea.
Yes.
That's another one that you'll not. You ever heard of the Alfred?
I'm pleading to this, but I didn't do it.
That's right. I'm not guilty. You can't. I agree that you can prove it in a courtroom. I agree that, but your information isn't the same as my information. But I'm going to go ahead.
I did that with my brothers and my mom quite a bit growing up. I didn't.
The Alfred plea?
Yeah, it wasn't me, but he did it.
You're pretty clever. At least me was telling me about this because they threw this Alfred plea at her when she took the bar, and she said, "I'd never heard of the Alfred plea." I'm sitting here with this schmuck who's invented podcasting, and he's been using it as a kid. What's going on over here? You've been holding out on it.
All right, so then the DeShaun Watson bombshell comes down, and this has been the big one because this has dragged on now for, see, how many?
It started last year.
Yeah, early last year. Now, so he got busted for a 6-game suspension without pay, will not be fined for violating the league's personal conduct policy following all the accusations. And this was the first case that the union and the owners agreed to with the first time you have an independent arbitrator and this Judge Robinson, in which they were not going to allow Roger Goodell to be judge and jury and meting out punishment along the...
That would have been an appeal, right? Would have went back to him.
Exactly. And so they're supposed to abide by this. Now, each side... it's going to come down any second whether or not the league is going to stand for this because they're not happy.
Oh, that's right. Tomorrow is the day that they have until tomorrow.
They have until tomorrow. So I got to tell you something. I've read a lot about this. This is complex and so goddamn icky. And I don't really know what the answer is because you got a guy who has not been convicted of anything criminally.
And 2 grand juries have failed to indict him for anything.
Refused to indict. He has settled with, and this is floated around. He has settled now with 23 out of 24 women. 4 other women are out there that have refused to settle. So he got the ick part of this too. When you see that he played all of last year, got his full salary from the Houston Texans, did not play it down. He wanted out, which also leads you to believe that he won out because he knew this was coming, and how complicit, because the Houston Texans, one of their staff gave him an NDA. He said, I got some problems. I'm going to need some. They allowed him to use the facility for some of these massages. I didn't realize the Houston Texans have settled with like 30.
Yeah, they were involved in it.
They were involved with it. So now the Cleveland Browns, they gave him a 5-year record, $230 million, guaranteed the most in NFL history. And you know what they did? They knew this was probably going to happen. They backloaded his contract. He gets $1 million and change this year as the signing bonus, and the rest of his salary is deferred into future years and next year. So it would have been.
So he won't take a hit.
His hit is like $330,000 out of his pocket. Mm-hmm. He got all his money last year, didn't play it down. He would have gotten 46, but they structured this contract because they knew how it was.
Well, I wanted to say, and based on what I said earlier about people don't care, and I honestly don't believe they do. Yes, some people do, but the masses really don't care. They want, blood and guts, and that's just the way it is and the way it's going to be. Classic example is that if you look, I think it was I saw yesterday a photograph of Watson after practice signing autographs. It's like, they don't say, hey, DeShaun, can you sign?
He was a rock star.
Yeah, well, he is. I mean,
yeah. He's going to be allowed to practice. He's going to be allowed around the preseason.
He better be good. That much I got to tell you. He better be good. Was he really? Is he Jack? Is he got lightning in a bottle, or what's the deal? I mean, he's set out of here. He
could be a flash in the pan. The jury is very much out. He seemed to have all the tools, and then people are saying, "Oh, well, then the Texans imploded, and he was part of the chaos." So, he's young enough, but the ick factor is. He's going to miss 6 of his $57,500 game checks in 2022.
That's
it. For a total of $345,000.
Thanks for playing.
Lost off of his $1,035,000 base salary. His salary next year jumps to $46 million. Wow, how'd they do that?
He's going to make $46 million next year.
Yeah. John, 230.
Can't fathom it.
5 years, guaranteed.
That's so. He makes more money than the 45-year-old Tom Brady by quite a bit, I believe, right?
Yes, you were not wrong.
How does that? I don't know if I'm Tom Brady. I don't know. I'm thinking, who's the owner down there? I can't remember who owns.
Is it the Glazers?
The Glazers. Mr. Glazer. We need to talk. Who knows? Well, I think we've kind of covered a lot of stuff today, Todd.
We
I
did.
got a lot of work to do.
You do, but it's your birthday, so take a day off.
I think I'm going to have to. I think Friday I have to do it.
And get back to the ripping and the
tearing. And that's the worst part, is the day after your birthday is almost like, the first day of school. It's so depressing. It's like, no, before everybody's calling you, wishing you have a birthday, next thing you know, you drop like a bad habit. Anyway, that's enough for us. We'll see you next week. Riggo out.